Humans are walking war crimes, and that's why they're not allowed in our wars. Professor Adrian Kane's declaration hung in the air, the weight of his words pressing down on the class like an invisible force. The students, a diverse assembly of alien species, sat in stunned silence, each processing the gravity of the statement in their own way. The lecture hall, with its sleek, metallic walls, was a marvel of interstellar architecture, designed to accommodate beings of all shapes and sizes. The sterile glow of the overhead lights cast long shadows, giving the room an eerie, otherworldly atmosphere. The room was filled with a diverse array of alien species, each one representing a different member of the Galactic Coalition, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. There was a Vosk warrior with thick, armored hide that gleamed under the artificial lights, leaning forward in his seat, a frown creasing his rigid brow. Even the usually serene and emotionless Zelak, with their translucent jelly-like forms, seemed to ripple with unease. A young Rakash named Sarah raised her hand tentatively. "Professor Kane, aren't humans physically weaker than many of the species in the Coalition? How could they possibly be considered so dangerous?" Kane turned his gaze to Sarah, his eyes narrowing slightly. "It's not their physical strength that makes them dangerous, Sarah. It's something far more insidious." The professor activated the holographic display behind him, and a series of images flickered to life. The first image was of a human soldier, clad in primitive body armor, standing atop a pile of rubble, his face smeared with dirt and blood. "This is a human during the siege of Talvor," Kane explained. "Note the lack of advanced weaponry, the minimal armor. Yet this one man was responsible for the deaths of over 3,000 Scorn warriors in a single night." A collective gasp rippled through the classroom. The Scorn were known for their resilience and ferocity in battle, their warriors nearly 9 feet tall, with claws that could rend steel as easily as paper. The idea that a single, seemingly under-equipped human could cause such destruction was beyond comprehension. Another student, a reptilian being named Marcus, hissed in disbelief. "This is impossible. What kind of weapon did he use?" Kane's expression darkened. "No weapon, just his mind. Humans have an unparalleled capacity for violence and a disturbingly creative approach to warfare. They don't just fight, they adapt. They improvise. They find ways to turn even the most benign objects into instruments of death." He gestured to the next image, which showed the aftermath of the siege, the battlefield littered with the bodies of Scorn warriors. Among the dead were crude, improvised traps, sharp shards of metal tied to ropes, makeshift explosives rigged from scavenged materials, and pits filled with sharpened stakes. The class was silent, the weight of Kane's words settling over them. They had all heard stories of human cunning, of their ability to outthink and outmaneuver their enemies, but this was something else entirely. This was a calculated, almost animalistic instinct for survival at any cost. Kane's voice softened, becoming almost a whisper. "And it is this very ability that makes humans so unpredictable, so dangerous." The students shifted uncomfortably in their seats, the reality of what they were learning sinking in. They had come to this class expecting to learn about human culture, perhaps even to dispel some of the myths and rumors that surrounded the species. But what they were discovering was far more disturbing than any of them had anticipated. Kane continued, "You must understand, humans are not like us. They are not bound by the same rules, the same moral codes. In war, they are something else entirely, something monstrous." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. The students exchanged uneasy glances, the tension in the room palpable. Finally, one of the Zelak, a student named Emily, spoke up. "But surely the coalition has measures in place to prevent such atrocities?" Kane sighed, rubbing a hand over his face as if the weight of the knowledge he bore was a physical burden. "The coalition has done everything in its power to contain the threat. Humans are not allowed to participate in any military conflicts. They are closely monitored, their technology restricted. But," he trailed off, his eyes distant. "But what?" Sarah pressed, her voice trembling. "But there are always loopholes, always ways to circumvent the rules, and humans, they're very good at finding them." The room was deathly silent. No one dared to speak, to ask the next question that was on all their minds. Kane looked around the room, meeting each student's gaze in turn. "This is why we study them. This is why we must understand them. Because in the end, it's the only way we can hope to defend against them." The lecture continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. The students were no longer simply absorbing information. They were grappling with it, trying to make sense of a truth that was both terrifying and undeniable. Kane closed the lecture with a final warning. "Remember this: humans are not to be underestimated. They are not to be provoked. And above all, they are not to be trusted." As the students filed out of the lecture hall, the weight of what they had learned hung over them like a dark cloud. They had come to study humans, to understand them, but they were leaving with more questions than answers, and a deep, unsettling fear that they would never truly know the full extent of the danger that humanity posed.